What's going on, everybody? Darrell, the Whiskey Saint, back with another review. And this should be a banger. Hopefully, that is, right? Honestly, don't know. Haven't tasted this whiskey yet, but pretty excited to dive into it. This whiskey probably made almost everybody's top 10, I would imagine, last year. It was a really, really killer bottle. Some batches in particular are a little better than the others, but nonetheless, this was pretty much on everybody's list. If you're new to our channel, hit that like and subscribe. I'm going to keep you in a little bit of suspense over here. We'll get back in a minute, show you what we're going to be reviewing. Cheers. Welcome back, guys. With no further ado, no more of the suspense. What we're talking about today, guys, is the newest Michter's 10. So last year, the 2023 version was just incredible. It was probably one of the best batches I would imagine in the past, God, since probably 2015. I had a 2015 that was killer. 2015, 2016, some of those earlier releases were really, really good. Then they kind of just became okay, for the most part. Never bad, but just not something that people were really trying to search for. But those 2023, in particular, the A batches were just stellar, stellar whiskey. The following batches after that, the B's, C's, D's, and E's, weren't as good, but still pretty good. Still better than pretty much the last prior, 4 years, 3 years or so, right? So it was still really good, just not on par with those A batches. So I was really curious to see if the A batch of 2024, is going to be able to compete with the 2023A. I do have a little bit of the 2023A poured up on the side, and we're just going to kind of compare and contrast the two towards the end of this video. But we're going to pour this up. And full transparency, I haven't even dived into it. It's open. Thanks to my buddy Jeff for hooking me up with this. We're going to dive in. I poured some samples for some friends. I actually got to pour some more. But that is the only reason it's open. I haven't even tried it yet, guys. So we're going to pour some up right here and give you my first impression on it. Give it a little spin. And like always, the colors, dark amber with these. You never really see them too light. 10 years, it's kind of expected, right? Some deep barrel influence. But let's go in on our nose. Cheers, guys. Ooh. Well, that smells familiar. Right off the initial nose, it reminded me of those 2023s. Just some nice rich oak, vanilla. Definitely get some age there. I would imagine this is probably still above that 10-year marker as well. I don't know if it's as high as what the last year's 2023s were, because those were rumored to be around 14, 15 years. Maybe upon taste, I can kind of gauge if it's in that vicinity, but right off the nose, it's coming across a little older. To me, I would think in that 10 to 12 range or so, but nice and sweet. Nice oak there, but the oak's not overpowering by any means. But you do have a slight dusty funk. I will say on the 2023, I got more of that dusty, funky bourbon note. I'm not getting that per se on this, but it's still not the norm. It's still not what those 21s and 22s were. This definitely smells older, just not as rich from what I remember on the 2023, which we got one to the side. We'll dive in on that in a minute just to see. But yeah, let's go in for a sip. Okay. So I will say this. First sip was slightly underwhelming. Like nice flavor. In terms of actual it tastes very similar to the last year's batches, just doesn't lack or just doesn't have the depth and the finish that I got on the other ones. Granted, that was first sip, guys. We're going to take another sip, see if that finish actually lingers a bit. But I do remember the 2023 having a surprisingly long finish for, what are these, 94.4, I believe? Yeah, 94.4 proof. Let's take another sip, see if that finish changes a bit. There it is. Much better on second sip. It's kind of dying off a bit right now, but so the spices go to my mouth, but all the flavors are still present on the middle and the back of my tongue, which is nice. I don't mind that. I don't really need that spice to give me a long proof sensation. I like those flavors to remain on my tongue, which are still there presently, which is nice. All in all, I do remember the other batches being a little bit just come across proofier. Like I would have thought they were maybe like over 100 proof. This one's drinking right at that proof point of what it is, that 94. But this is nice. It's not blowing me away like the 2023 batches did upon literally first sip, second sip, third sip. This is good. Just doesn't seem like it's on par with the 2023s. But this is not bad at all. I'm going to take one more sip, then we're going to dive into the 2023 A batch that I have poured to the side, guys, just to do a quick comparison. Upon that third sip, I got a lot more oak tannins. It was a little bit drying on that sip, but I don't mind heavy oak. I know it rubs some people the wrong way. Me personally, I've never really had a whiskey that I thought was just over oaked and just not good. I just get like a slight bitterness to some very oaky bourbons, but it doesn't rub me the wrong way. This did come across a little oakier on that third sip than it did on the first two, but not to the point where I'm thinking somebody's gonna say this is over oaked by any means. Still super, super sweet. Just really like some nice honeys, some vanillas, deep oak. Got some depth to it. Wish it had a little bit more, but all in all, this is a pretty good whiskey. Let me grab the A batch from last year. And let's nose this one. So this seems actually a little bit brighter up front, more so than I remember it actually being. I remember this being a little bit dark and just full of depth and oak, which I'm not really getting at. Granted, this bottle is pretty low now, but the nose isn't as familiar as I remember it being. Let's see if the palate is. Cheers, guys. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's night and day, guys, but there is a pretty big difference between these batches. The A from last year is still, it just sits heavier. It's a little bit, God, I don't want to say if it's more viscous or not, but it coats my mouth a little nicer. And that finish is just everything. Right, 94, you're thinking that, it's just going to be like a good drink, but this packs some nice spice. I don't know if it's a high rye mash, but we don't really know the mash bill with Michter's, but this thing drinks if it's not proofy, which it isn't, right? Like it's high in rye with that spice. And the second batch here, the 2024, doesn't have that punchiness. Although the flavor's still nice on it, this just from start to finish, is a little bit more consistent and balanced. Let's take another sip of this. This is too good. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a little brighter, which is funny. That's not what I remember it being, but it's still just darn good, man. You got that rich, that oaky funkiness that you get off whiskey from, I don't know, like the early 2000s or so, right? Or some whiskeys that are, 15, 16-year old. You just got that funky rickhouse mustiness, which sounds kind of odd, but I know a lot of you out there know what I'm talking about on that note. But yeah, that Michter's from last year has that all day. This one has a little bit of it, just not as present. Still really, really good. Would I say buy this? If you can find this bottle at retail, I think it's worth a pickup and add into your bar. I wouldn't go out of my way and pay secondary. I know since these just came out, secondary is pretty high on them. I think they're in maybe close to like 400 range or so, which it's not worth that, guys. The last year's, I've seen a lot of people pay 400. Would I? Probably not. But this one here, if you can get at retail, and I think retail's 199 or 189 or so for this bottle, I think it's worth the pickup. It's really, really good. Not as good as last year's, but still a good bottle to add to your bar. That has some good age to it. I think this is over 10 years. It doesn't drink like a 10-year whiskey to me. It does drink a little bit above that with the oak profile that you're getting on the palate and even on the nose. But who's to say, right? It's age stated at 10 years, so we're just going to say 10. But I think there's some older stuff in there, like last year, just not as high of an age. But yeah, that whiskey's solid. We're gonna take one more sip of last year, or actually this year's batch, the new one, and we're gonna end this video off. But I think it's a buy, guy, at retail. At retail, anything above retail, I think it's a pass, or maybe even just try before buy. But yeah, if you could definitely get it at that retail cost, I think it's worth a pickup. It's just solid. It's like nothing that super wows me on any aspect of it, and that makes it seem like it's average, but it's not. It's definitely above average. It's just so hard coming off of what last year's was, and everybody's going to be comparing this bottle. It's the same thing we ran into with Elijah Craig C923, hoping that the A124 was going to be anything like that, so we just held it to a very, very high standard, which is kind of unfair to a point, but it is what it is, right? Is this one as good as last year's? No. But is it good whiskey? I think so, in my opinion. I do. We're going to take one more sip, guys. We're going to end this off. Thanks for sticking with me so far. Yeah, just such an easy sipper. I can literally just sit there and keep pouring this and pouring it and pouring it. It lacks that proof, which is nice though when you're sitting here to kind of, drinking something on a daily, but just has a lot of depth and some flavors that, you're not getting on some of this newer stuff that's coming out, which I really, really like. Michter's 2024. What is this? The A0378 barrel. Pretty darn good, guys. Haven't officially scored it. I'll update some of our score sheets soon, but I would imagine this would be in the 80s range for me. I know it's not going to push 90s like the last year's did, but I'll say probably safely 82 to maybe 85 range, probably in that ballpark. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. If you do see it at retail, guys, like I said, I think it's worth a pickup. Don't go out of your way trying to buy it. Look for the 2023, if anything. But it is a good pour. On that note, we're going to end this off, guys. Thanks for being here. Cheers. See you next time.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello